What happens when one of the world's largest trading relationships suddenly comes under strain? How do nations respond when tariffs escalate rapidly, threatening to unravel decades of economic cooperation? This is precisely the challenge North America now faces as Canada responds to President Trump's tariffs with retaliatory measures of its own, setting off a ripple effect that threatens to shake the entire continent's economy. At the heart of this conflict lies a complex negotiation between Canada and the United States. Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Donald Trump are reportedly engaged in direct discussions to reach a trade deal and lift these tariffs. But how close are they to a resolution? And what might the future hold for this vital economic relationship? The saga began with tariffs on steel and aluminum, two crucial industries that form the backbone of many manufacturing and construction sectors. Then, on June 5th, the United States dramatically doubled its tariffs on these metals from 25% to 50% overnight, targeting Canada and Mexico, its closest neighbors and largest trading partners. The White House justified this move by invoking national security concerns. But on the ground, within North America's deeply integrated economy, it looked more like a declaration of economic war. Within just 5 days of these tariff hikes, the economic fallout started to reverberate throughout the continent. Every grocery shelf, car factory, and farm in Canada, Mexico, and the United States found itself caught in the crossfire of this new tariff shockwave. This conflict is far more than a typical trade dispute. It is a fundamental test of the framework that has held North America together since the signing of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, over 30 years ago. For the first time since NAFTA was renegotiated and updated into the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, the three largest economies in the Western Hemisphere now face the very real risk of collapse. This is not merely a political spat, but a potential unraveling of one of the world's most significant trade alliances. Canada, the largest foreign supplier of steel and aluminum to the United States, was blindsided by these tariffs. Mexico too faced similar shockwaves. While the White House's official stance cited national security, senior U.S. officials admitted that drugs and border control issues were underlying factors, turning tariffs into a tool to force compliance, not just on trade, but on immigration and narcotics policy as well. For industries built on trust and predictability, the message was clear and alarming. Business as usual is over. The new tariff hikes affect hundreds of billions of dollars in annual trade. Metal exports, while significant, are just the beginning. If negotiations fail by the mid-July deadline, the White House has signaled it may impose tariffs on virtually all Canadian and Mexican goods at a rate of 25% across the board. Canadian oil could face a slightly lower rate of about 10%, but nearly every other product, from autos and food to medical supplies and consumer electronics, would be hit. Legally, the path is murky. A recent ruling by a US trade court declared these executive tariff moves likely unconstitutional, as tariff authority resides with Congress, not the White House. But an appeals court quickly reinstated the tariffs through an emergency stay, meaning the duties remain in place for now. This ongoing legal tug-of-war has left supply chains crippled, stock markets rattled, and tested the limits of presidential trade power. Canada was quick to respond. Prime Minister Carney, sworn in earlier this year, addressed Parliament with a clear warning: Canada is preparing retaliatory measures and will not be steamrolled by American tactics. Provincial leaders also took decisive action. Ontario Premier Doug Ford and British Columbia's David Eby declared immediate countermeasures, including halting liquor purchases from US producers and pulling funding from major contracts linked to American companies, citing national economic security concerns. Across Canada, liquor stores removed American wines and bourbons from their shelves, replacing them with Canadian alternatives. This move reflected a growing public sentiment. Polls showed that 91% of Canadians now support reducing their country's dependence on the United States, the highest percentage ever recorded. Mobile apps like MapleScan, which help consumers identify Canadian-made products, surged in popularity, and online communities promoting Canadian goods grew to hundreds of thousands of members. This is more than consumer choice. It is a form of economic resistance. Meanwhile, Mexico's response, while less retaliatory initially, was firm. President Claudia Sheinbaum condemned the tariffs as a blatant violation of the spirit of the USMCA. Mexico pledged not to engage in tit-for-tat measures, but insisted it would not back down. Protecting jobs and businesses was the priority. Mexico's Economy Minister, Marcelo Ebrard, opened direct talks with US officials to try to prevent a deeper crisis. But Sheinbaum warned that if negotiations failed, retaliatory tariffs would follow swiftly. "We have Plan B, Plan C, and Plan D," she said, indicating Mexico's readiness to defend its industries by all means necessary. Veteran Mexican trade negotiator Ildefonso Guajardo recalled that this was not the first time the US imposed such tariffs. In 2018, Mexico responded by targeting politically sensitive American exports like pork, cheese, and whiskey, pressuring US lawmakers in key swing states, and it worked. Guajardo urged Mexico to use a similar strategy again, taking the fight back to Washington. The economic shockwaves are already visible. In Ontario, automakers warned US factories could run out of parts within a week due to the tariffs. Car components often cross the border multiple times during assembly, and each crossing now carries a 25% tariff, potentially wiping out profit margins overnight. The auto industry is sounding the alarm, warning of layoffs if shipments halt. Premier Ford suggested possible retaliatory measures, including cutting off electricity exports and nickel supplies to US plants. Food prices are also feeling the pressure. In the United States, grocery prices have already risen 8 to 12% in 2025 alone. Key products like tomatoes, avocados, strawberries, and peppers, all mostly imported from Mexico, now face tariff surcharges. Canadian beef and pork, which have traditionally helped stabilize US meat prices, are also under threat. Consumers are beginning to feel the impact directly. One economic analysis bluntly stated that Americans are now paying tariffs at the dinner table. But it's not just food. The Congressional Budget Office estimates these tariffs will reduce US economic output, increase inflation, and slow consumer spending. Essentially, the US is taxing itself. Manufacturers scramble to find new suppliers, retailers rethink inventory, and investments stall. In Mexico, small businesses are under severe strain. A nationwide survey revealed that basic grocery prices rose by nearly 0.5% in just 1 month, with limes jumping 14% and instant coffee nearly 5%. Distributors face uncertainty, and small store owners cannot easily pass along costs without losing customers. As the president of Mexico's National Alliance of Small Merchants noted, large companies can maneuver, but small businesses cannot. They face a double blow. The mounting pressure is fueling social media campaigns promoting economic patriotism. Boycott hashtags encouraging consumers to buy Canadian or consume Mexican have gained traction. While boycotts alone won't save exporters, they can influence long-term buying habits, something companies fear deeply. Even American companies are feeling the fallout. Tesla, already hit by political controversies, saw significant declines in Canadian and European sales in early 2025, with its stock price falling 40%. Major US retailers like Walmart and Target brace for disruptions as Canadian and Mexican consumers rethink their purchases. These brands face not only supply chain turmoil, but also reputational risks. At the geopolitical level, the stakes could not be higher. What remains of the North American Trade Alliance if this escalation continues? The USMCA was designed to guarantee tariff-free trade across the continent. But if national security becomes a loophole for sweeping tariffs, the agreement risks unraveling. Mexico is already considering legal action, invoking USMCA dispute panels to resolve conflicts. Canada, fresh from a recent court victory in the US, may soon join the legal battle. But litigation is slow, and meanwhile, the economic damage worsens. Industry leaders across sectors, from auto manufacturing to farming, grocery retail to importers, are calling for a reset, urging Washington to negotiate rather than escalate. But the White House remains firm. An official recently told reporters, We want the best offers, or we go all the way. That is the real danger. If all three countries lose faith in the system and tariffs become the norm, North America risks fracturing into isolated adversarial markets. The consequences would be higher prices, slower growth, and fewer jobs for everyone. The economic miracle of the past 30 years was built not just on cheap goods but on trust. Canada, Mexico, and the United States created a model of cooperation that made the continent one of the most productive and prosperous on Earth. Now that trust stands on the brink of collapse. And the most worrying part? Most people don't even realize it is happening. They don't see the trucks stalled at borders, feel the chill in auto factories, or read the export contracts being cancelled. But soon, they will notice it in higher grocery bills, rising utility costs, and the insecurity of their jobs.